IQ Smart Parent is made possible in part by the McCune Foundation and the Grable Foundation.
A landmark survey revealed parents lack confidence when it comes to getting young kids excited about science.
Parents just aren't thinking about it. Or if they are thinking about it, they feel an intimidation.
Without an early introduction to science activities, kids struggle to succeed in critical STEM subjects as they get older. It's a problem for schools, for the workforce, and for the economy.
If we miss out on science, then we are missing out on a prime opportunity to cultivate problem solvers, which I think we could probably all agree that society needs to solve these problems that are in front of us.
Hear from experts who conducted this important study and get advice for overcoming your science anxiety so you and your child can share wonder and curiosity about our world together. That's all coming up on our special edition of IQ Smart Parent, and it starts right now.
For decades now, educators, parents have been saying to one another, reading is really important. But we've not been sending as many messages about the importance of science. And as a result, parents don't necessarily understand that science is just as important for young learners.
A groundbreaking survey is shining the spotlight on parents' complicated relationship with science. The survey also reveals what's at risk for kids if parents don't start promoting science activities sooner.
Many parents thought that science was less important than other domains, less important than literacy or less important than math, and we really want to change that because if parents don't value science, they're not going to do it. The early years are foundational to everything else that follows. That's true of one's health, and that's true of one's education. So early success often leads to later success.
The survey focused exclusively on families with young children ages 3 to 6 years old. It was conducted by researchers at the Education Development Center and SRI International as part of the Ready to Learn initiative. It included phone surveys, focus groups, and home visits with more than 1,400 parents and caregivers.
The Ready to Learn initiative really emphasizes school readiness, and that means being ready to take advantage of the formal educational system. But many kids are showing up in kindergarten or first grade and they don't have some of the building blocks. Those gaps that exist are never caught up. So instead what we want to do is make sure that all kids have rich experiences so by the time they're in kindergarten or first grade, they're ready to take advantage of those supports.
But only about half of the families surveyed said they engage their young children in science activities on a daily basis. And one of the reasons why turns out to be the parents' own lack of confidence in the subject matter.
There's no shortage of opportunities for parents to feel badly about themselves, to feel guilty about what they are and aren't doing, and science is a good example of that. Parents may have a science anxiety or a hesitancy, and often what do we do with our worries? We keep them inside. And so the more that we can talk about science as something that everyone can do, the less alone that parents are going to feel. Science is something that families can be doing every day. We sometimes think of science and think, oh, that's an elaborate process. But in fact, science is exploration, and that's especially true if you're working with a 4 or 5-year-old. It's going outside and asking questions, why, what, where, how, and really letting curiosity lead.
Research shows even very young children can develop and test hypotheses, ask questions, generate explanations, use models, make predictions, and revise those predictions based on what they observe.
Science is a great precursor to problem solving. We want all kids to be able to solve problems and to do so creatively, and science is a great way to do that. But if we miss out on science, then we are missing out on a prime opportunity to cultivate problem solvers, which I think we could probably all agree that society needs to solve these problems that are in front of us.
The national survey sums up 5 essential messages to help families overcome their science anxiety. Parents don't need to know the right answers to help children learn science. Parents are crucial to their young children's science learning. Science is for home, school, and all of the places in between. Science is watchable, readable, playable, and doable. And finally, parents should have access to research and resources to help them engage their kids in high-quality activities.
Parents make this mistake that they think that they have to have all the answers, when in fact, the journey, it sounds corny, but it's the exploration together that parent and child do together that really counts. What parents need to know is that they have the ability to make a huge difference in their children's learning. That these early years are extremely important and they are their child's best guide.
The national survey about young children and science found parents want ideas and resources to help them build their confidence. They also said activities that use everyday materials would help them do more science on a daily basis. Here's an IQ Smart Parent staff favorite that you can try at home with your kids.
This activity helps kids learn about the concept of density. In math, it's represented by mass divided by volume. Put simply, density means how big something is compared to how heavy it is. You can demonstrate this by comparing 2 similar items, like these 2 small balls. They're both similar in size, but one is heavier than the other. That means the heavier one is made up of material that is denser than the material in the other ball. Now it's time to add water to the mix. Denser items will sink. Less dense items will float. Ask kids to gather everyday toys and trinkets. Make sure they're water safe. Next, ask them to make predictions about the density of the objects. Kids can make separate piles out of the toys, one for less dense items they think will float, and one for more dense toys they think will sink. Not sure about the density of some items? Make a third pile for those. Kids love testing their predictions. What do you think? Which will sink and which will float? It's fun to guess the density of fruits and vegetables, too. The peppers and the strawberries both float, but these carrots, they go straight to the bottom. Which one is more dense? The carrots, because they sank. Now that your kids understand the concept of density, don't be surprised if they want to test it out with lots of items they find around the house. Look for other examples of density at home and in nature, comparing the size and the weight of different loaves of bread, pointing out oil spills on top of water, helium balloons that rise because helium is less dense than air, even salad dressing that separates in the bottle because oil is less dense than vinegar.
These are the daily science activities parents said they engage in most often. But Shelley Pasnick points out that science exploration doesn't need to follow a formal structure.
Science is everywhere around us, and young children are tactile, they're hands-on. And so a great way for parents to begin a science exploration is to get kids noticing. How does a prickly seed feel, as you're touching it? How does a leaf crinkle in your hands? It's about following the path of a bug. It's so much of just exploring what is naturally around us.
The organizations that produced the national survey teamed up with WQED Multimedia in Pittsburgh to present findings at a mini science summit.
And what we found is that all parents want the best for their kids, right? Regardless of income, regardless of background, everyone wants what's best for their kids.
As part part of the presentation, educators, parents, and community stakeholders rotated through stations to learn how everyday materials can spark creative science exploration.
We want you to play with all of these materials.
It teaches you how to think, how to investigate, how to ask questions. So you're not just fed information, you learn how to engage your mind and how to find answers for yourself. So having a scientific mind, the word science means knowledge, that's it.
We're really training them where they can find resources.
There's no reason that, pre-readers and pre-writers can't use this program. And let's work through it. If I put this string of code together and then now I do these pieces, what is it going to look like?
I think this one here, because it sort of opened up a world to me. And you start with the yellow to start the story and just start on green. It just looks like a game, but they're actually, coding.
But that doesn't mean a teachable moment should become an academic seminar.
Parents don't need to lecture their kids, not to chase after them and say, oh, but, I want you to understand, this scientific principle. Instead it's going to unfold over time.
Letting the learning unfold over time means helping the child continue to make connections and observations about a concept. And the survey revealed parents are missing opportunities to deepen the impact of science experiences.
3D bugs, which really crisp and clear, and the view of it was bigger than life.
Using this toy to view a slide of an insect is a good example. The activity can serve as a bridge to further exploration.
It would definitely give me the ability to ask questions like, wow, what color did you see? Maybe we can go out into the yard and find one. I wonder if we have any of those in our backyard. It could just start a whole list of questions.
I think it's not just about memorizing facts. In fact, that's inappropriate for 4- and 5-year-olds. Instead, it's the power of the question. It would be terrific if all kids had the power of questioning. That is the building block of science.
It is stuck. It does look pretty dry, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you pass it around so we can?
It does look like it's
dry.
dry. Yeah, it does.
It kind of looks like some of them stick together.
Yeah.
Some of the...
It's almost magnetic-like.
It does look dry. Look at that.
These men work with the United Way in early childhood development.
We're trying to see how we can make it more bouncy.
Yes. They're always looking for ways to support early science literacy.
Oh, that was a good one. Let's see, we got to cut it up higher.
This balloon experiment is a good choice.
These are inexpensive opportunities that are very simple to demonstrate some basic science principles with the kids that you're working with. So it would be easy to implement. Parents could do it. You could do it in the classroom.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Yes, and it's getting higher too. Yeah.
Another station at the Mini Science Summit invited teachers to play with flashlights and shadows.
Here, the caregiver would hold it, and then the child would draw the outline of the shadow.
To do science with a 4-year-old doesn't require an investment, other than an investment of time. So you need not buy a telescope or run out and buy other items. Instead, science can be done with everyday objects, and it can be done in the natural world.
Easy and cost-effective activities matter. The survey showed engaging in daily science activities was particularly challenging for families in lower-income communities.
We wanted to focus on families that don't have a lot of financial resources to see if their beliefs and attitudes about their children's learning were any different. So we specifically oversampled families who don't have a lot of resources. 63% of our families didn't have an income over $50,000 for their household.
Over the past decade, poverty and income disparity have grown, and kindergarten students living in poverty display less knowledge about the natural world than children from more affluent families. This gap in science-related knowledge widens as children reach high school.
It's really important also to support them outside of school. And many kids at the age of 3, 4, 5 are outside of any formal setting. And so providing support and helping caregivers and parents understand that they can really make a difference is important.
Researchers pointed out that the parent's real power lies in expressing that same sense of wonder about the world.
It would be terrific if parents saw themselves as co-learners. Showing a child that you have curiosity about the world models for that daughter, for that son, that you care about learning. That learning is not something that's static and that you complete, but learning is a lifelong process.
Here's another IQ Smart Parent staff favorite for a very colorful science activity. This one helps kids understand why we pour water on soil in order to help an entire plant take a drink. The process is called capillary action. It allows liquid to rise upwards against the force of gravity, and that's how a plant draws water up from the ground. It's similar to the way a cloth soaks up liquid. To make it even easier for your child to see the science of capillary action, fill clear containers with water and add about 20 drops of food coloring to each one. Next, grab some white flowers. We used roses, but carnations and daisies work just as well. Cut the bottom off the flower stems at a 45-degree angle. Then put them in clear containers with colored water. Now play the waiting game. The longer the flowers stay in the water, the more evidence you'll see of capillary action. The colored water soaks up through the stem and dyes the petals. Once your kids understand capillary action, build on that knowledge. Look for other examples at home and in nature, such as sponges when you wash the car, mercury rising in a thermometer, a lantern's wick soaking up fuel, even tears moving through tear ducts in our eyes.
We have a rare opportunity to do good work together.
Back at the Mini Science Summit at the WQED studios, educators learned more about the results of the National Survey on Children in Science, especially ones focused on digital media. Pamela Johnson is the executive director of Ready to Learn, an initiative spearheaded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
We have learned so many things about what the media can be a catalyst for.
Digital media includes television shows, films, games, mobile apps, and more. And the survey revealed many families report using science media weekly, but they don't believe these resources have helped their children learn a lot.
Parents are bombarded with resources, with messages about what they should and shouldn't do, what they should and shouldn't use. We know that there are hundreds of thousands of apps, for example, that claim to be for young children's development and claim to be educational. Sometimes these are just claims. And it's really important to think about what is underneath these claims and when there's really a base of science.
Quality science media has rich potential to help families. Parents can make better use of digital media resources by knowing how to evaluate the products their kids consume.
When you talked about in the survey about parents and their anxiety around science learning, that's me, like in my professional life, in my personal life.
You know, that parents, if they can, stop to take a moment to say, all right, who's behind this resource? You know, who made this material? What are their claims? Has it gone through the process of, you know, working with educational advisors? Has it, is it developmentally sound? And they also don't need to do it alone. They have educators, they have teachers that they can call upon, they have librarians, they have, you know, public media that's providing resources.
We don't make a piece of content without collaborating with science experts or literacy experts.
Are there clues in a program's credits that show that it's based on evidence-based research? If they say it's a science show or it promotes social and emotional learning, do we see a science consultant or a research consultant in a credit list that might give us clues to the quality of the program we're watching.
You would see names of the advisors in credits.
So it would be things like advisory board or literacy experts or education consultants?
Right, probably at the core websites of these projects, all following kind of this science and engineering practices model of exploring and asking questions and inquiry with science, and so they've got all of that going on.
The survey also showed once parents identify quality media, they need to understand how to leverage the educational content.
So they might watch a video, for example. I'll go to Cat in the Hat. When the video's over, then the fun also can continue. To go in the backyard and to see if you can recreate the shadow play that happened, or to act as though you're Nick and Sally on some exploration. To then leave the backyard and go to the bathtub and see if you can create the same shadows in that environment, or to go into your bedroom and to turn off the lights. It's the experience that goes from one place to another that really has kids consolidating a particular skill or a particular practice.
Educationally sound, high-quality media from public broadcasting has a role to play in closing opportunity gaps, in closing achievement gaps for our young children. That's so important to Ready to Learn because media goes to all homes in the United States. 99% access, free, non-commercial, educationally sound learning goes to children in their homes.
We want children to think creatively and to be able to tackle problems, and doing so allows them to be informationally literate, right? To assess the validity of information. That's something we're hearing a lot about in the news right now. To look at evidence. It's really being able to evaluate evidence, to make predictions, to not simply go from emotion, but to argue from evidence. If this society is going to continue to flourish, and I certainly hope that it does, we need to place an emphasis on science literacy and science learning and, creative problem solving. Not everyone's going to become a scientist, but everyone does need to have critical thinking skills, and science can certainly help that.
Want to learn more about IQ Smart Parent? Visit us online at iqsmartparent.org for more episodes and additional tools and resources. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest to share your thoughts on being a 21st century parent. IQ Smart Parent is made possible in part by the McCune Foundation and the Grable Foundation.